Commander Zack-7 stood at the viewport of the Nexus, the massive command ship of the Arconian fleet. His 6 eyes, arranged in a hexagonal pattern, scanned the swirling chaos of the Helios system. Countless automated ships and swarms of nanobots swarmed around the dying star, methodically dismantling the inner planets to fuel the construction of the Arconian Dyson swarm. Status report, Zack-7 demanded, his voice a low growl that reverberated through the bridge. Science Officer Krell 9 approached, his exoskeleton clicking against the metallic floor. Commander, we've achieved 63% completion of our swarm. The Tellarites are at 61%. We maintain our lead, but it's shrinking. Zack-7's upper appendages twitched in agitation. The Tellarites, their sworn enemies and rivals in this cosmic race, were catching up. Both species knew the stakes. The civilization that completed their Dyson swarm first would harness enough energy to power their expansion across the galaxy. The loser would be left behind, doomed to eventual extinction as their home system's resources dwindled. Unacceptable, Zack-7 hissed. We need to widen the gap. What's slowing us down? Krell 9 hesitated before responding. Sir, we've detected anomalies in our construction patterns. Some of our nanobots are malfunctioning, and we've lost several asteroid processing stations to unexplained accidents. Zack-7's eyes narrowed. Sabotage, he growled. The Tellarites are playing dirty. Well, 2 can play at that game. Summon Rex 3 to my quarters immediately. As Krell 9 scurried away, Zack-7 turned back to the viewport. In the distance, he could see the faint glimmer of the Tellarite swarm taking shape. This race had just become a war. On the other side of the dying star, aboard the Tellarite flagship Prometheus, Admiral Garv paced the bridge, his heavy footfalls echoing through the cavernous space. His thick, trunk-like legs carried his massive form back and forth as he waited for an update. Report, Lieutenant Mox, he bellowed, causing the younger officer to flinch. Mox, a slender Tellarite with cybernetic implants lining his skull, quickly pulled up a holographic display. Admiral, our swarm is now at 62% completion. We've nearly closed the gap with the Arconians. Garv's tusked mouth curved into a satisfied grin. Excellent. Our covert operations are paying off. Have there been any retaliatory strikes? Mox shook his head. Nothing confirmed, sir. But we've lost contact with several of our outer construction units. It could be random failure, or the Arconians are finally showing their teeth. Garv finished. He stroked his coarse beard thoughtfully. Increase security on all critical nodes, and send word to Agent Vex it's time to escalate our efforts. As Mox hurried to carry out his orders, Garv turned to the main view screen. The star at the center of the Helios system pulsed angrily, its outer layers already being siphoned away to power the competing swarms. Soon, Garv muttered to himself. Soon we'll never have to worry about energy or resources again. The galaxy will be ours for the taking. Deep in the asteroid field that once made up the system's outer planets, Rex 3 piloted his stealth ship with practiced ease. The Arconian operative's specialized exoskeleton allowed him to interface directly with the ship's systems, making it an extension of his own body. His mission was clear: disrupt Tellarite operations by any means necessary. As he approached a massive Tellarite processing station, he activated his ship's cloaking device. This is for the future of Arconia, Rex 3 whispered as he launched a barrage of microscopic nanobots towards the station. These were no ordinary nanobots. They were specifically programmed to infiltrate Tellarite systems and cause cascading failures. As Rex 3 veered away from the station, he allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. It would take hours, maybe days, for the sabotage to take full effect. By then, he'd be long gone on to his next target. But as he plotted a course to another Tellarite outpost, proximity alarms blared. A Tellarite patrol ship had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, its weapons locked on Rex 3's position. Impossible, Rex 3 hissed. They shouldn't be able to detect me. The comm system crackled to life, and a gruff Tellarite voice filled the cabin. Arconian vessel, power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will be met with lethal force. Rex 3's mind raced. Being captured wasn't an option. The sensitive data in his neural implants could compromise the entire Arconian operation. He had to escape or ensure that data never fell into enemy hands. With split-second decision-making, Rex 3 diverted all power to engines and weapons. Come and get me, you Tellarite scum, he snarled, engaging in a deadly game of cat and mouse through the asteroid field. Back on the Nexus, Commander Zack-7 received the emergency transmission from Rex-3. The operative's stealth ship was heavily damaged, limping back towards Arconian space with 2 Tellarite cruisers in hot pursuit. Launch interceptor Zack-7 ordered. I want that ship recovered at all costs. As the Arconian fighters streaked out from the Nexus, Science Officer Krell-9 approached the commander. Sir, if we commit our forces to this rescue, it will delay our swarm construction. The Tellarites could overtake us. Zack-7 fixed Krell-9 with an icy stare. And if the Tellarites capture Rex-3, they'll learn enough about our operations to cripple us entirely. Sometimes, to move forward, we must first protect our flank. The space around the dying star erupted into chaos as Arconian and Tellarite ships clashed. Energy weapons lanced across the void, and explosions blossomed in silent bursts of light and debris. Amidst the furball of fighter craft, Rex-3's battered ship limped towards the safety of the Nexus. But the Tellarite cruisers were closing fast, their weapons wearing down the stealth ship's failing shields. Come on, Zack-7 muttered, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The entire war effort hinged on the safe return of that single ship and the information it carried. At the last possible moment, a squad of Arconian interceptors broke through the Tellarite line. They formed a protective barrier around Rex-3's ship, absorbing the enemy fire meant for the operative. As the stealth ship finally docked with the Nexus, Zack-7 let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Get Rex-3 to medical immediately, he ordered. I want a full debriefing as soon as he's stable. The battle gradually died down, with both sides retreating to lick their wounds. But Zack-7 knew this was only the beginning. The race for the Dyson swarm had just become a full-scale war. Admiral Garv slammed his meaty fist on the conference table, causing the assembled Tellarite officers to flinch. How did we let the Arconian operative escape, he roared. We had him in our grasp. Lieutenant Mox cleared his throat nervously. Sir, our intelligence suggests that the Arconian ship was carrying critical data about their sabotage operations. The Arconians were willing to risk everything to recover it. Garv's eyes narrowed. Then we must assume our covert activities have been compromised. It's time to change tactics, he turned to a scarred Tellarite sitting silently in the corner. Agent Vex, you've been waiting for this. Initiate Operation Sunfall. Vex nodded grimly and left without a word. The other officers exchanged worried glances. Sir Mox ventured Operation Sunfall hasn't been tested. The risks are necessary, Garv cut him off. The Arconians have forced our hand. We'll solve 2 problems at once, cripple their swarm and accelerate the star's decay. They'll have no choice but to withdraw or be consumed when Helios goes supernova. A stunned silence fell over the room. Garv looked each officer in the eye. Make no mistake, gentlemen. This is now a fight for survival. If anyone isn't prepared to do whatever it takes to secure our future, speak now. No one did. Days passed, and the Dyson swarms grew steadily, locked in their deadly race. On the Nexus, Rex-3 had recovered enough to deliver his report to Commander Zack-7. The Tellarites have developed some kind of stellar manipulation technology, Rex-3 explained, his voice still weak. They're not just building their swarm, they're accelerating the star's death throes. Zack-7 absorbed this information with growing dread. To what end? They'll destroy the very energy source we're fighting over. I believe that's the point, Sir Rex-3 replied. They're betting they can complete their swarm before the star destabilizes completely. We'd be forced to withdraw or risk destruction. The commander's mind raced with the implications. We need a countermeasure. Krell-9, assemble a team. Find a way to stabilize the star or protect our swarm from a premature supernova. As his officers scrambled to carry out his orders, Zack-7 felt the weight of his entire civilization pressing down on him. The Arconians had survived wars, plagues, and cosmic disasters, but never had they faced extinction so squarely. Sir, a young communications officer interrupted his thoughts. We're detecting a massive energy surge from the Tellarite side of the system. Zack-7 rushed to the main viewport just in time to see a blinding flash erupt from the dying star. A shockwave of stellar plasma raced outward, engulfing a significant portion of the partially completed Dyson swarms. Alarms blared throughout the Nexus as the shockwave approached. Brace for impact, Zack-7 bellowed. The command ship shuddered violently as the wave struck. For several heart-stopping moments, it seemed as though the Nexus might tear itself apart. But gradually, the shaking subsided. damage report, Zack 7 called out. Krell 9's voice was grim as he responded. We've lost nearly 20% of our completed swarm segments, sir. The Tellarites appear to have sacrificed a similar portion of their own construction. Zack 7's mind reeled. In a single stroke, the Tellarites had reset the race, destroying months of work. But why? Unless. Check our long-range sensors, he ordered. Focus on the star itself. After a tense moment, Krell 9 reported back. Sir, the star's decay has accelerated dramatically. At this rate, we have less than a week before total collapse. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The Tellarites had just started a countdown to destruction for both civilizations. Now, it truly was a race against extinction. In the chaotic days that followed, both the Arconians and Tellarites threw everything they had into completing their Dyson swarms. The dying star pulsed and swelled ominously, a constant reminder of the dwindling time. On the Prometheus, Admiral Garv oversaw the Tellarite efforts with grim determination. Status report, he barked. Lieutenant Mox, haggard from days without sleep, pulled up the latest data. We're at 89% completion, Admiral. The Arconians are at 90%. It's still anyone's race. Garv nodded, his expression unreadable. And the star. Mox swallowed hard. 52 hours until critical mass, sir. We may have miscalculated the acceleration rate. For a moment, Garv's imposing facade cracked, showing the fear beneath. They had gambled everything on this ploy, and now it might destroy them all. We have no choice but to press on, Garv said finally. Divert all non-essential power to the construction units. We either finish the swarm or perish in the attempt. As Mox hurried to carry out the orders, Garv turned to Agent Vex. It's time for one last push. Take a strike team and hit the Arconians where it hurts. Slow them down by any means necessary. Vex nodded grimly. It will be done, Admiral. For the glory of Teller. Aboard the Nexus, Commander Zack 7 found himself facing a terrible decision. The Arconian swarm was nearing completion, but projections showed they would miss the deadline by mere hours. Commander Krell 9 reported, we've detected a Tellarite strike force approaching our primary construction hub. Our defenses are spread thin, we can't guarantee its safety. Zack 7's mind raced. That hub was critical to their efforts, but defending it would divert precious resources from swarm construction. How long until the swarm reaches minimum viable completion, he asked. Krell 9 consulted his data. 48 hours, sir, cutting it extremely close to the star's collapse, but it should be enough to preserve a significant portion of our population. Zack 7 made his decision. Redirect our defensive fleet to protect the construction hub. We must complete the swarm at all costs. As orders were relayed and ships moved into position, Zack 7 felt the weight of billions of Arconian lives on his shoulders. They would save as many as they could, but untold millions would be left behind, sacrificed for the species' survival. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the Tellarite flagship. Admiral Garv is requesting to speak with you. Zack 7's eyes widened in surprise. Put him through. The grizzled face of Admiral Garv appeared on the main screen. Both leaders regarded each other warily. Commander Zack 7, Garv rumbled, I'll be brief. We both know only one of our swarms will achieve critical functionality before this star consumes us all. Zack 7 nodded cautiously. That much is clear, Admiral. Why are you contacting me? Garv's expression was grim. I propose a truce. Pool our resources for one final push. The species that completes their swarm first salvages what they can of the other's population. A murmur ran through the Nexus bridge. Zack 7 considered the offer carefully. It could be a trick, a final Tellarite ploy. Or it could be their last hope for salvation. How can we trust you, Zack 7 asked. Garv's laugh was without humor. Trust has nothing to do with it. We're out of options, Commander. Together we might save some of our people. Apart, we'll likely doom them all. Zack 7 looked around at his crew, saw the fear and hope warring in their eyes. He made his choice. Agreed, Admiral. Let's hope we're not too late. The final hours were a blur of frantic activity. Arconian and Tellarite ships worked side by side, centuries of hostility temporarily set aside in the face of impending doom. The star continued to swell, occasional flares lashing out and destroying segments of the unfinished swarms. On the Nexus, now linked to the Prometheus via a jury-rigged command network, Zack-7 and Garv coordinated the desperate effort. "We've got a cascade failure in Sector 7, an Arconian technician called out. Reroute power from the Tellarite auxiliaries," Garv ordered without hesitation. Zack-7 nodded gratefully to his former enemy. "Krell-9, what's our status?" The science officer's voice was strained. 98%, Commander. But the star's collapse is accelerating beyond our projections. We have minutes, not hours. Zack-7 and Garv exchanged a look of grim understanding. They were out of time. "All ships, initiate emergency protocols," Zack-7 commanded. "Begin evacuation procedures to the completed sections of the swarm." Garv's voice boomed across the joint communication channels. "This is Admiral Garv. All Tellarite vessels, coordinate with Arconian evacuation efforts. I repeat, this is not a drill. Move with all haste." Across the Helios system, a mad scramble ensued. Ships of both species jettisoned non-essential systems, overloaded engines, and pushed their structural integrity to the limit as they raced towards the swarm's completed segments. On the Nexus bridge, Krell-9 monitored the evacuation's progress. "Sir, we're at maximum capacity in the habitable sections. There are still millions unaccounted for." Zack-7 felt his heart sink. They had known this moment might come, but facing it was another matter entirely. "Keep the channels open," he ordered. "We'll take as many as we can until the last possible moment." A violent tremor shook the Nexus, nearly throwing the crew from their stations. Through the viewscreen, they watched in horror as the dying star began to collapse in on itself, its outer layers already beginning to expand outward in the first stages of a supernova. "All ships, take emergency positions," Garv bellowed. "Brace for impact." In that moment, as the star's death throes reached their crescendo, the differences between Arconian and Tellarite seemed to fade away. They were simply people, united in their desperate bid for survival against the cosmos itself. The shockwave hit with unimaginable force. Smaller ships were vaporized instantly. The Nexus and Prometheus, massive as they were, tumbled end over end, their hulls groaning under the strain. For several agonizing minutes, it seemed as though the entirety of both civilizations might be obliterated. The partially completed Dyson swarm flexed and buckled but somehow held together, shielding the evacuees huddled within its embrace. When the initial wave passed, an eerie silence fell over the system. The star that had been Helios was gone, replaced by an expanding cloud of superheated gas and the dense remnant of a neutron star. Aboard the battered Nexus, Zack-7 pulled himself to his feet, surveying the damage. "Status report," he croaked, his voice hoarse from shouting orders. Krell-9, bleeding from a gash on his exoskeleton, checked his instruments. "The swarm held, Commander. We've lost contact with approximately 40% of our fleet, but the habitable sections are intact." Zack-7 nodded grimly. "And the Tellarites?" After a moment, Krell-9 responded. "The Prometheus is heavily damaged but operational. Admiral Garv is hailing us." The main screen flickered to life, showing the Tellarite bridge in disarray. Garv, his beard singed and one tusk broken, managed a weary salute. "It seems we both live to fight another day," Commander Garv said. Zack-7 returned the salute. "So it would seem, Admiral. Though I suspect neither of us is in much condition for fighting at the moment." A chuckle, tinged with exhaustion and relief, passed between the two leaders. They had been bitter enemies, and likely would be again. But for now, they were simply survivors. "We should discuss next steps," Zack-7 continued. "Our civilizations are irrevocably intertwined now." Garv nodded solemnly. "Agreed. We'll need to establish protocols for shared resources, living spaces. There's much to be done." As the two leaders began the monumental task of forging a future for their merged peoples, the Dyson swarm hung in space, a testament to both the destructive potential and the indomitable spirit of sentient life. In the habitable sections, Arconians and Tellarites worked side by side, no longer separated by species but united in their shared trauma and hope. Children of both races, too young to understand the long-standing enmity, played together in improvised recreation areas. Rex 3, his body still bearing the scars of his earlier mission, found himself sharing a meal with a Tellarite engineer. They swapped stories of narrow escapes and daring exploits, each gaining a newfound respect for the other's culture. In the temporary council chambers hastily established aboard the Nexus, Zach 7 and Garv sat across from each other, the weight of their civilization's futures heavy on their shoulders. "We'll need a name," Garv mused. "Something to unite our people." Zach 7 considered for a moment. "The Phoenix Collective," he suggested. "Born from the ashes of our star, rising to new life." Garv nodded approvingly. "Poetic. I didn't think you Arconians had it in you." "There's much we have yet to learn about each other," Admiral Zach 7 replied. As they continued their discussions, the Dyson swarm began to power up fully, drawing energy from the nascent neutron star. Slowly but surely it started to move, carrying the remnants of two once-rival civilizations into an uncertain but hopeful future. In the vastness of space, the Phoenix Collective embarked on its journey, a new chapter in the cosmic story of survival, adaptation, and the indomitable will to persist against all odds. The race was over. In the end, there were no true victors or losers, only survivors, united in their shared determination to forge a future among the stars.